have the Cavs lost since the last podcast?
It's been quite a winning streak. And I remember last time when we recorded, we were going over the upcoming stretch of games and who we were playing. And I was like, I expect us to be winning a lot of these ones, especially the ones at home, and they did it. And we needed to because it was some of the tougher matchups like the Bucks, the I think clear best team in the East right now. If you want to say maybe Celtics too, but I think in terms of matchups, the Bucks is our toughest matchup that we have in the East right now. So to be able to get that win, I'm feeling pretty good right now.
You know what I felt like watching that game? This felt like a playoff series, right? Where it's like you lose the first two games in Milwaukee, and then you get like game three and you just jump out big on them and hold the lead. Like this is like for those of us who haven't watched a ton of playoff basketball, this is like a peak playoff basketball moment where it's like, oh yeah, are the Cavs out of it? They have to win game three. What are they going to show? And then they just come out like hard at the beginning. It's like, okay, cool. We might get six out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what that felt like. You know, it was interesting watching this game too. It's the difference between an all-star and a star, right? Darius Garland's an all-star, and he's really good. I think Jared Allen's an all-star. He's really good. I think Evan Mobley will probably be an all-star this year. He's really good. But Donovan Mitchell's a star. And the difference between the all-star and the star is when Darius has 10 points in the first half and he has bad shooting splits, you're like, hey, Darius is having an off night. Is what it is. You're going to have to make up for it. When Donovan has 10 points and he has a bad shooting day, you're like, well, he's getting to 30. You know what I mean? Yeah. So he's probably going to have a hot third quarter, right? I had the most confidence in I was looking at him. He made a free throw right before halftime, and he just splatted it. It was just clean, like nothing but the bottom of the net. I was like, it was like a technical free throw, I think, on a play. I think it was on Brook Lopez, and he just smacked it. And I was like, okay, yeah, he's going to get 30. He's going to get 30.
And it doesn't even look hard to him. It looks like easy. It looks like for the average person scoring 10 points in a game, but for Donovan, like 30 is his baseline these days, it's pretty incredible. I think the other big thing from this game though was the last two matchups against the Bucks. We came out firing in the first half, just playing really hard. It was like, okay, this is a good matchup. And then we blew it in the second half. And this time, even though there were a few moments where it felt like they were letting up and maybe the Bucks would chip away a little, bring it within like 10 points, they still continued to play hard. And it was never really that close for the majority of the game. And I think they needed to have a second half like that against this team.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me. One of the things that happened in that half was like when Donovan just lit up, right? I think he had like a tremendous third quarter. And then also, what I think was that when Jetty didn't do much. That was the Jazz game where Jetty just went off for no reason.
Yeah.
Just a classic Jetty game, right? When you don't need it,
like,
you give it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're up 15. Let's get some bench points going. Oh, Jetty's going to drop 24 in 20 minutes? I guess, right? Like, did you just randomly get the Jetty game? Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I thought the defense for this Cavs team is what's taken the leap here, right? We talked about this before, but I think we saw a leap because the big thing that went wrong in that 5-game losing streak was Jared Allen was out and the defense suffered massively. And it was like, okay, this reminds me of last year where the defense wasn't good for whatever reason, and they struggled without Jared Allen, and it's happening again, and it's not fixed. But then Jared Allen went out for another stretch of games, and I think the Cavs went like 4-1 in that stretch of games, and the defense was great with just Evan Mobley out there, and I think that's when people were like, this is like some KG stuff going on with Evan Mobley, and I was like, oh, okay. The defense finally got over that last hurdle, right? Which is they were so reliant on the two big system. How can they defend when they only have one of them out there? And then they figured it out. And now you see JB getting crazy out there. Two bigs on the perimeter at the same time. And they're still blocking shots. They're still not giving up free throws. And they're still one of the best defenses. I mean, we look at these point totals held. Utah to 99 held the second best team in the NBA, one of the best scoring teams in the NBA, to 106. Dallas, 99 points. You know what I mean? Yep. Dallas, 90 points with Luka Doncic. This defense has been what has really turned the corner because earlier in the season, they were up in like 124, 123, these giant score games. That's died down and the defense has gotten there. And I think also they're learning how to play offense in those games where they can't get those big shooting nights. And you saw it with Donovan. He got to the line like 14 times in this game. That's where I'm like, oh, they're learning some stuff. They're putting together some stuff that's going to really help them in the playoffs, because that's the kind of stuff that hurts you, right? When you have an off shooting night in the playoffs, you don't get to the free throw line, you get blown out. But they're starting to figure that out. And I think that's why in that third quarter, what happened to them against Milwaukee last time did not happen, because they weren't making a ton of shots, but they were getting to the line a lot in the third quarter. And that was able to that helped them keep pace and maintain that 20-point lead.
I completely agree. Getting to the line has been huge. And not only the two bigs defensively, I also think like Donovan has hustled so hard on defense. It's been fun to watch his kind of transformation as a defensive player in this league, which he was not known for whatsoever before. He's played some really good defense. And then the ability to have Okoro out there now in a way where he's not an offensive liability as much anymore because he's making more shots, but just is such a good defensive player. It's an all around like great unit at this point defensively. We already knew we had one of the best defenses in the league, but it felt like there was still another level for them to go because we were just kind of missing some pieces here and there. But with the level that Donovan's been playing at on defense, and then Okoro now being able to be out there and play with such confidence, I think it's just changed what they've been doing out there on that side of the ball.
Yeah, with Okoro, like I think I had this template. I can't remember it verbatim, but I was like, if he can do this, right? And I think it's what gets to the foul line, get 6 free throw attempts, right? Like 6 free throw attempts, make one of 3 threes, right? Like just shoot 3 threes, make one of them. That's fine with me. And then, get a couple layups, right? Like get a couple layups in the game, right? If he's being aggressive with the ball, right, when he has those opportunities, if he is getting to the foul line and then he can just make the occasional 3, I think then you can justify having him out there. His defense is better when he's playing like that. And then all of these things come together in a package that ends up being very beneficial for this team as a whole. And for Isaac, it's just like, hey, he just needs to like get to the foul line more often, because he can do it. He is dangerous in transition. He's dangerous cutting to the basket. And you're starting to see it now where he's like, oh, I could just go to the hoop. If they're gonna sag off, I can still beat them to the hoop, and that's gonna make them stop sagging off of him. And if he could just get to 1 3-pointer a game, right? 3 attempts, you don't want him going crazy on these attempts, right? Same thing with Evan. Evan's only gonna take 3 a game. Try to get to 33. But yeah, just 3 attempts. Maybe if you're open 4, but get to the line, right? The aggressiveness has to be there. And when he's a more aggressive and confident player, he's a better defender. And he's a really good piece for this team. My only concern is that the length sometimes is a problem for him when he has to go up against dudes like Giannis, right? Like that's the thing. Like the big guys.
It's scary to watch. You're like, oh my God, he's like a full foot shorter than you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. You don't think of Isaac Okoro as small, right? Because he's bigger than most of the guys he defends. And I'm wondering, like, too, some of his defensive stuff was a lot more helpful last year when Darius and who was like the guard that would be sharing the floor. It was like Darius and Karis LeVert would be sharing the floor a lot, or it would be Darius and Ricky, or sometimes it'd be Darius and Colin Sexton, right? And when that was the case,
Goodwin, that other guy that we had,
Brandon Goodwin too. So when that's the case, and you have 2 guys who aren't good defenders out there in your backcourt, Isaac's role was to kind of slide over and guard one of those 2 positions, right? And he was long enough to guard those 2 positions at 6'5". Now we're asking him to be a true wing defender, because a lot of that was done by Laurie last year, right? So now they're asking him to be a true wing defender, and his height's going to come up more often, right? In that case, because most wings are about 6'6", 6'7". He's a bit undersized for a wing, and he doesn't have an especially long wingspan. And since Donovan's such a good defender, right? We talked about this. He's really good in the clutch, and he's really a good rebounder too, for whatever reason. Length. But since he's so good at that position at 2, defending, you don't really need Isaac to help out anymore up there.
Right.
And that's kind of leaving Isaac in this awkward spot where now he's a wing defender. He's a good defender, like against like a lot of guys, but like some guys are going to give him problems just because he ain't that tall. Oh, and I say that about a man who is 6'5". The NBA is crazy, but yeah, he's not extremely tall. He's just very tall, right? Yeah. And that's the thing. I think Lamar Stevens has an advantage over him because Lamar Stevens is 6'8", 6'9", so he has that length to be able to go up there. When he guards Giannis, you're like, oh man, Lamar's a big dude. You don't really think about it, right? Until he's up against somebody like that. But with Isaac, that's the one thing where I'm like, I'm glad he's playing well, but also, could this be him kind of getting a position somewhere else? Because I don't know if the role is right for him in Cleveland, because he's going to be asked to do some things that are going to put him in compromising positions.
Yeah. Well, and it is like an interesting question moving forward here. Once Lamar does get healthy and comes back again, like, do they continue with Okoro in that starting group, or do they switch back to Lamar? Obviously, like, once Dean is back, there's still questions on like who is like the right person in there, because you're right, Lamar does have the size factor that helps. Like, I remember watching the Bucks game last night. At the beginning of the game, you see Isaac, like he was put on Giannis kind of earlier in the game, and I was just like looking at him trying to like body himself up against him, and I'm like, yeah, that's just not gonna happen. Good luck, but this is
it looks like a bad pick and roll switch. It's like, oh man, how did that happen, right? And you're like, no, that's Isaac. He's supposed to be on him, like,
Yeah, it's tough look.
But that's where it's like, now they're starting to get like Jared Allen out there, and I think a lot of this is because Lamar Stevens is hurt, right?
Yeah.
And they don't have that extra length, so they're trying to get Jared Allen out there in the wing, and that kind of worked. And then we know Evan Mobley can do that, but we also want to, like, when you're playing Giannis, you don't want Evan guarding Giannis, because you don't want Evan in foul trouble, right? Like, that's the same reason why Giannis does not guard KD, right? Like, you don't want your best defender, one of your best defenders, up against KD, because he's gonna get in foul trouble, right? Like, that's just what it's gonna be. You got to sacrifice somebody else, like Lamar Stevens, Dean Wade. Y'all got to take them hits. You know what I mean? So that's part of it, right? Where it's like, hey, you want physically just to see the matchup, Giannis on Evan, but you only gonna get that but like 6-7 possessions a game, because you can't afford to put him at risk, because Evan's so long and he's not strong enough yet to hold his ground, so he's gonna be moving backwards in a lot of these situations. And when you're moving backwards and Giannis runs into you, that's a block. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there ain't nothing he can do about that.
Yep. Yeah, he was getting himself in some foul trouble even in that game. And I find it funny because in the other way, I still feel like the Cavs just do not get when they need them. It does get frustrating in the last couple games. There's been some moments where I'm like, man, we still are just not a team that they're gonna blow that whistle our way. It doesn't happen.
Let me tell you somebody who agrees with you. JB Bickerstaff.
He does. That's why his voice is gone.
There has never been
I've seen yell about every single call. Like,
I've seen those two individuals get texts on calls that they got because they didn't get the shot. Like, they didn't get the foul shots after it. They called it on the floor. Like that. Those two, Hall of Fame level of petty.
Yes.
In basketball court.
Always like that. Like, I don't remember him being that guy always, or if I'm just having like
he was always like that, but like, when he was noticeable, it was in Memphis. It was in Minnesota, where nobody watched. Okay. And then when he was in Cleveland, yes, he did it, but also the king of doing those kind of things was here, which is true. LeBron. And it's hard to be noticed complaining about foul calls when LeBron is there, because he might be the most demonstrative. Like, I think Kevin might have picked up some things from LeBron and how he handles the refs, because like, if LeBron doesn't get a call, you know what I mean? And I think it made it hard to notice Kevin until Kevin wasn't in here. And then people started noticing and be like, oh, Kevin has a bad attitude. No, Kevin been doing this stuff forever.
LeBron would show it on his face. You could see it. It was the most expressive anger that you could see on the
Half of his memes are him yelling at referees or teammates for not doing specifically what he asked him to do. Like, so I think it was hard for him for Kevin to get noticed for doing that. But Kevin's been doing that for a while now, right? Like, especially how he plays. He plays like a real ticky-tack style. He kind of has this like, I need to get the foul, and like, he does the James Harden stuff at 7 foot.
Yeah, he wants his charges so badly too. There were a couple that he tried to take against Giannis, and they just weren't giving it to him, and he's like, come on, I'm trying to do this. And they're like,
don't blame him, because you know what, man, I'm not trying to take no Giannis charge. Like, that hurt. I don't think people understand two things. One, I think we really don't have a good grasp on how much football hurts in the NFL. And then two, I don't think we understand that this stuff hurts in basketball.
Yeah.
Screens and taking charges. It hurts. You know how strong Giannis is? And like, I can't say anything about Kevin Love's toughness because he sits there and he attempts to take a charge on Giannis. Nobody does that.
Hard.
Kendrick Perkins used to just be in the game to set screens and take charges. He didn't do that. Like, you know what I mean? His whole career depended on his ability to do that. Like, Kevin will just, like, so if I'm Kevin Love and I take that hit and I don't get it, man, that's like when the kicker misses a field goal and you see them dudes who have to take the punch on the offensive line get mad at the kicker. Man, that's just because it hurts and you didn't do the thing that I wanted. You know what I mean? Like, that's...
Well, and charges are like the most intimidating too compared to other fouls because you're literally planting yourself there knowing I am letting you run full speed into me because I want to get the call here. Whereas like other fouls, you're kind of like both, going hard. This is like I'm planting myself and allowing you to truck me over. Like it's tough.
And it's like I can't move my feet to brace because they might call a block.
Exactly.
Like there's no call when you decide to set up there, right? Like that's the thing. Yeah, either you get to a free possession or you end up sending Giannis Antetokounmpo to the free throw line, which is not a bad proposition, but it's still the proposition is the charge. And like I don't know if you have gone to an NBA game, have gotten close to what Giannis looks like in person or to what somebody like LeBron looks like in person or like any of these dudes who be moving this fast and that Kevin Love be taking the charge from, I promise you would have a new respect for why that man is mad. I would be furious every charge I didn't get. I would be, did you not see me get hit in the chest? Like, no, I want it all. Like, you think he falling? And Kevin's not young. That's the thing that's commendable. He's not young. He's doing this like he's like, who was the dude at Ohio State? He used to be a basketball player at Ohio State. Point guard when Ohio State had Greg Oden, I think.
Was it Aaron Kraft? Is that who you're thinking of?
Aaron Kraft was the charge king, and he was 19 years old and doing that. Kevin Love's like 36.
I loved Aaron Kraft. I was the biggest Aaron Kraft fan.
Yeah, it was like Aaron Kraft, and I think was that Terrence Dials before the Greg Oden team? I think he was on there, or was that after? Yeah, but I
feel
remember
like it was before, if I'm remembering correctly.
Because I know Terrence Dials was before. But yeah, those are some ancient, that was back when like 43 used to put on the Buckeye basketball games. And Michael Regai used to be on the call.
You bring up Greg Oden. So I went to Ohio State and I remember he came back to like work with the basketball team in some capacity. Like I think he was an assistant of some sort. But I would be like at a college bar a couple times and I'd look over and I just see Greg Oden standing there with a beer at a college bar by himself. I'm like, Greg, what are you doing here, man? I don't know why you're at a college bar right now.
You, dog. Like you're 7'2".
You're a little big. And I'm like, you've been gone from this school for a while now. I know you're working here now, but I don't know if this is the right move.
You gotta go where you know. Gotta go. He only went to school there 1 year too. That's the tragic thing. He don't even get to know anything. He just gets to know what everybody else tell him to know. You know what I mean? Right. You don't even get to discover your own spots when you only there for a year. But
what could have been? What could have been?
Yeah, it is. So I feel for Kevin. I think we started with Kevin Love taking them screens, and them screens hurt, right? But I don't think people understand. Them screens hurt, man. Them screens hurt, and them charges. I don't know how he does it because I have taken charges at the rec center, and I ain't never doing that again, man. That hurts. Like I might as well play football if I'm gonna do this. But
the whole time I'm thinking, like I played high school basketball, and I remember there was one girl in a game I took like 4 charges against her. They didn't call a single one. And I just went to the bench so angry. And I ended up becoming friends with that girl years later. And I was like, I took 4 charges against you and they didn't call them. And she was like, yeah, sorry. Like it's tough. You put your life on the line.
Oh my goodness. And you just got to stand there, like the courage to just do it. And the thing about this Cavs team, I think is interesting. It's a reflection on the coaches is that like everybody be doing it now. Like I've seen Karis LeVert try to take a charge. Like it's part of the defense is that if Kevin, instead of rushing to get to an angle to block a shot, what he will do to cut off a layoff attempt and adjust the shot is he'll just plant right? Like he will just plant there, show this to charge, and everybody knows that he will take the charge to the point to where I've seen guys pass out of that at that shot because they're like, I don't want to run into him, get charged. I'm gonna just, because also it's a fear factor thing for the offensive side of the ball because it can't be fun running into Kevin Love either, right? Like it's not like Kevin Love's small, and especially like for guards. I think that's a big thing. I think that's part of Kevin Love's defense, right? When Kevin Love talks about, I'm not a good on-the-ball defender, but I'm a good team defender. This is the stuff that he's talking about because no, he's not going to stop Michael Conley from driving to the rack or Beauchamp or whoever we're talking about at the perimeter driving at the rack if he's on ball. But what he can do is rotate, set his feet, and get in screen position. And that's either going to have to make them travel to get around him or just take a shot to try to get through him. And that negates a lot of those short plays. And also, he's aware that, hey, if I do that, either Evan Mobley or Jared Allen is on the floor with me at the same time. And if you give those guys an extra half a second, we have seen it, right? Where Jared or Evan comes out of nowhere and they block a shot, you know, and alter a shot or get a rebound. And that happened a lot in this Milwaukee game. What other takeaways do you have from this win streak so far?
So other than obviously the great defense, the Jazz game was interesting within the win streak because I feel like there was a lot of build up around it. Considering it was basically the Cavs playing the ex-Cavs, quite a few of them out there. But I think the conversations were so big around it too, because a lot of people still obviously want us to have like a shooter like Larry. And we kind of, people have had a lot of questions about the trade working in general. And I think Donovan just was like, yeah, I'm shutting all of that down right now. I'm an MVP candidate right now. So put some respect on my name. And it was good to see that in that matchup, because I felt like it was a nice, like, overall closure moment for the whole story of that trade.
And I thought it was nice, too, that he didn't even feel like he had to go off for 40. He was like, I'm going to play 23 minutes, score 23 points on like 10 shots.
Yep.
And then we're going to be up by 40. Have you seen the Lakers show on, I think it's on HBO Max? And there's that one scene where Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he's talking to like this new coach. He's like, you're going to do this system and I want you to do this. And the ball's going to go to Magic. And he's trying to tell Kareem how the game's going to go. And Kareem is like, I have played in this league for 13 years. I have this many points. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have 25 by the fourth quarter. And then at the end of the game, it's going to come down to 2. Magic's going to pass me the ball no matter what you draw up. I'm going to hit the sky hook, and we're going to win the game. And in that game, it happened. And I was like, that's not even like, I'm going to take 8 shots. I'm going to make like 9 of them, and then we going to go home. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, cool, wrap it up.
That was kind of like I think it was the Bucks game last night, actually, where it was the end of the third quarter and Donovan makes that bank 3 shot from like 40 feet away. And then was it Holiday that made the bank 40-foot shot for them? Yeah. It was like, oh, all right. These guys they're just messing around now, like, calling their shot. Have a good time.
Yeah, and it's nice to see, like, one of the things we talked about at the beginning of the year with the offense, hey, when it gets to crunch time, who's getting the ball? Oh, it's clear.
Yes,
it is clear.
It's more clear now than it's ever been.
When the Bucks were like making their run at the end of that game with like 2 minutes left, I was like, they're going to get Donovan the ball, right? And then Donovan gets the ball, gets the line. I'm like, okay, cool. Game's over. Game is over, And that stuff's not happening. Like, remember, like, there was a point this year where it's like they would blow that game. And now it's like, hey, we win by like 8. Really 10 because Evan didn't take that dunk at the end, but it was really a 10-point victory.
I wanted him to do that so badly, do the Zion dunk at the end there. You are right. Like, there were a couple games during some of our bad stretches. I remember there was one specifically where last 2 to 3 minutes of the game, Donovan did not touch the ball. And it was like they needed to learn that lesson that, like, your best player needs to touch the ball when it's a competitive game towards the end. Like, sometimes you just have to see it to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. We got to make sure this guy gets the ball.
Yeah, and I think it just takes guys understanding, like, everybody has egos, right? Everybody feels like they should be the guy that takes the shot. Yeah. But then Donovan puts up like 40. You know what I mean? Like, Donovan puts up like 40 back-to-back nights or something like that. And you're like, okay, all right. Yeah, Yeah,
He's
that's
that guy.
probably the guy. That's probably the guy that should have the ball, right? It just takes that. I don't want to say humbling, right? Because I think this team's pretty humble, but it just takes that. You got to see it, right? You can hear about these things, but the same thing happened, oddly enough, even with somebody of the caliber of LeBron, right? Where Kyrie
Yeah.
was kind of like, I'm still the guy on this team that's going to handle this. And then, LeBron had to have a couple moments where it's like, okay, never mind, get the ball to LeBron. If I'm open, I'll take a dribble shoot, a catch and shoot three or something like that, right? Like it takes that time to get that chemistry and get that trust. Quite frankly, it's like,
Yes.
okay, this is who needs to get the ball. This is what's going to happen. I forget which game this was in. I think it was in the Bucks game where they had a possession where like the ball got knocked out into the backcourt, and then Donovan started this dribble drive from like 3/4 of a way away. And I knew the second he picked up that ball, he was going to score 2 points, because I was like, he's going to get a full head of steam and there's nothing they could do about it. And he's just, again, I told people last night, I'll tell people again, watch this Cavs team. Like, this is a fun team. I don't know what they do, where they end up. They got a lot of questions to answer. But boy, the people in Memphis don't regret watching the hustle and flow Memphis teams, right? Because they were fun ultimately. They weren't champions. That's cool. But they were fun. This team is worth your time. It is a good 2 hours. You know what I mean? It's like Netflix. The show's fire. Like, it's fire. You know what I mean? Find a way to watch the Cavs. They are very good. They are very much worth the watch. Anything else you want to add before we head out?
Yeah, it's just like even through some of the bad moments of the season where they might go through a little bit of a slump, like we still have the same amount of wins right now as both the Bucks and the Celtics. I'm pretty sure it's both of them. I think they have less losses than we do, but we have the same number of wins as them. So it's like we are doing fine, even when it's a long season, when things get a little rough. Like we are winning basketball games at the end of the day, and that's exciting. We obviously have an interesting stretch coming up here with the Raptors, who have kind of owned us a little bit, but are kind of going through a rough patch themselves, and then the Nets, who just dropped 91.5 against the Warriors. So I'm interested to see how we do in those two performances, just as our trajectory going forward here into almost January. Like we are almost in 2023 basketball, which means it is moving along, almost Ricky time.
Will Donovan Mitchell get to 2023 undefeated at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse? Because he has, I think, the 2 games they lost, he did not play in.
Really? Wow, I didn't realize that.
Because the Sacramento game was the fourth quarter comeback. Well, no, the Sacramento game, he didn't play in, and then the other game was Minnesota, right? That they lost at home. And he definitely didn't play. That was the one that Darius had that crazy fourth quarter. So he didn't play in both of those games.
There's only a couple games. It could happen. That would be crazy. Could you imagine?
He could go to I don't know what he did when he was in Utah, right, in 2022, if they played here or if they didn't. But it's very possible that Donovan Mitchell can go the entire year without losing a game at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse.
He needs to be getting more love in the MVP conversation. It's kind of ridiculous. I feel like he's been majorly left out of, and I know there's a lot of great players out there, so I'm not like hating on anyone else, but I just feel like he should be at least talked about a little bit more.
Here's my thing too about that. If he's not in the MVP conversation, he's got to be most improved, right? He has made a 5-point jump in almost every major statistical category, advanced or just regular metrics. Like, he went from a good 3-point shooter, 37%. He's shooting like 43. Like, he's a top 10 shooter in the NBA now on like more shots than he did last year. Like, I don't know how he's not in more of these accolade conversations. We'll see what happens in the spring where this starts to get more serious. But, I feel like for him to get the MVP, you got to play more national TV games too. Like, that's just going to be part of it. So we'll see. But we know he's having a star-level season. I want to thank Ab for joining. Well, she's always joining. This is her show too. CAVS ATTACQ. Make sure you follow her at Abby_Mueller_. Also, make sure you check out her podcast, Just a Girl from Cleveland, on Spotify, Apple, everywhere where podcasts are done. She is there. and also her column on the SI Digest about the Cleveland Browns as well. Make sure you check her out there if you want to hear more. First, she talks about Ohio State, talks about the Cavs, talks about the Guardians. Those of you who are Quincy, talk about the Guardians. She talks about the Guardians. Check out her Guardians coverage. Browns, Guardians, Ohio State, all of those things that I know a lot of you guys are interested in. Make sure you check it out. And she's always here on Thursdays. And that will continue to go on going forward. So, Ab, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being here. Everybody have a great day and have a good night.